Good morning on this Friday morning on the short week. And I got to tell you something. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion. I'm looking at the markets, and yesterday started out very similar to what we are starting to see play out today. Yesterday, how did things really shape up? Well, started off kind of quiet, sort of flat, didn't look like a whole lot was going on. Next thing you know, we had this rapid rally to the upside. We're up 140, 150 points on the Dow. Matter of fact, you take a look over at the NASDAQ, it was performing very nicely. It was up 60, 70 points to the upside. And then the final couple hours of the day, we started to see this theme play out where the sellers came in. The sellers came into the point where we actually closed down 150 points on the Dow. We closed down on the NASDAQ by 40 points. So a huge shift in the final, call it 2.5 hours of the trading session. And it's something that we were seeing in the past. We stopped seeing that to the degree that we are now, but we're seeing something play out very similar to today as well. Before we get there, let's just take a look at what was going on with volatility. The volatility index did have that spike. We got up and over 19. We got up towards 1950. Pulled back just a little bit and closed right around 1880. You had oil, you had crude trading somewhere, call it around that 68 level. Bitcoin, 46,000. You look over at the 10-year, kind of a yawner because it just continues to be somewhere very close to this 132, 133. We did get a little move 137, but we're hanging right in a very, very tight range. Somewhat similar to what we were seeing Bitcoin, just kind of hovering near that 50,000 level, but below it, down towards 46,000. But nonetheless, an interesting day to say the very least. We did see financials hold on to some of the gains. Healthcare under attack yesterday. As a matter of fact, you look at some of the weakest moves yesterday in the market, what was pulling on the market. It's a long laundry list of names in the healthcare world, but let me just give you a couple of them. Biogen was down about 6.5%. Regeneron down about 3.5%. Amgen was down, call it 2.5%. J&J down over 2%. Merck down 2%. You kind of get the idea. The healthcare world was definitely under attack, except for one of those names, Moderna. That was up about 8% yesterday. So a little bit of a shift away from what the rest of the sector was looking at, the biotech and obviously healthcare world. And Moderna definitely did stand out. So airlines also did stand out yesterday. You take a look at American Airlines, Delta, Alaska, those names all up 3.5%. So a pretty nice solid performance there. Peloton. This thing is kind of Lazarus. It's kind of raised up from the grave. This thing was starting to get that hit. It was going down, down, down underneath 100. It's now had a pretty impressive spike to the upside. I've been caught off guard by it. I certainly haven't had any part of this thing, but a really nice move for Peloton. That was up close to 10% yesterday. As a matter of fact, Peloton had an interesting movement again today. But we start off today very similar to yesterday. We had the news about the president talking with Xi and this, that, and the other, and people were still worried, is the variant going to be an issue going forward? Where are we with this whole COVID thing? And the president with his message yesterday, there's just a lot of different news stories that were giving the markets a little bit maybe of a lift. At least that's what it looked like, because you look at the pre-market, we're up 160 points on the Dow. We opened up 210 points. From that moment in the last hour, now we have flipped all the way around. I looked, we were down 50 points. Glenn points out to me, hey man, we're down over 100 points already. So it just shows you how fast the acceleration really can be. And we talk about this all the time when we're talking about the V's, right? Velocity. This is more about the velocity of the trade. From up 210 to down over 100 points in the first hour of trade, that's some pretty decent velocity that we're seeing there. Crude oil, we did get very close to 70. We had a nice start for the day. We had energy looking up. Well, this is when things were much more positive in the green. But energy was up over call it over 1%. You had materials up over 1%. Technology was up over 0.75%. The financials, industrials up about 0.5%. Boy, did those things all flip in a hurry. And the one area that has hung on, and it's been hanging on, and we'll see if it can manage throughout the day, the semiconductors, and that really does stand out. And certainly when we look at technology, oftentimes we're looking more at the names like the Microsofts and Apples of the world, but you start looking deeper into the subsectors of something like the SMH, and you can take a look, Applied Materials, Micron, NXPI, all those names are up 2% or more, at least early on. And I think the last I looked, the SMH was up maybe 1.5%, maybe 1.75%, but maybe that's getting pulled down as I'm speaking right now. We'll find out in just a few minutes. Kroger had a great earnings report. This is one of those mysterious, interesting sort of reactions. Their earnings report looked outstanding. Their guidance looked pretty daggone impressive. And yet the stock was down 7%. Last I looked, it was down about 8.5%. And maybe some of that has to do with the year-to-date performance that Kroger has already had. It's had a monstrous move from the start of the year to the upside of where it just was just days ago, trading over 46, and now taking a little bit of a pullback now. Maybe it's just a breather. Maybe that's just the reaction that maybe a little too much, too fast type of a thing. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. I mentioned materials. Freeport-McMoRan was up, along with obviously leading the materials space. It was up over 3.5%. The last I looked, it was somewhere close to up about 2%. Might be a little bit worse. Maybe it's improved a little bit. We'll find out in just a few minutes. But the other area that then also hit the pause button, you know, the names that are in the XPO, when you look at certain areas and you look at Devon, you look at Diamondback, you look at, you know, you go through that list, Occidental, ConocoPhillips, all these kinds of names, and you look in that area, they were all running. Those beta names were having a pretty nice start to the day. I mentioned earlier on, we were up over 1%, significantly over 1% on the energy space. That reversed and pulled back in a hurry as well. So I would imagine that this has caused a pause for some of these beta names as well. I got two unusuals for you, and then I'm done for the day. I may be stepping in on the 5 o'clock show tonight with the Fast Money crew. It's just that half hour from 5 to 5:30 Eastern time. So we'll see. I believe I got an email that that's something that I might be doing a little bit of work with them as well. So you may see me later on as well. Plus, if you're part of the Market Rebellion crew, we have our annual or our weekly Friday cocktail hour as well. Always exciting. So, very number one. Well, you know, and things do change, and obviously we're seeing a very violent kind of a flip in the markets from the start of the day into this first hour. But early on, Wells Fargo stock was trading a little bit underneath 45. We had the buyer of 3,500 of the April 47.5 calls. Yeah, these aren't just going out a week or two, guys. They are going out in time for these calls. Those were going for about $3.10. My second one that I thought just stood out was GM. And there's been a lot of talk, a lot of chatter. It's amazing to me how many folks stayed away from GM till it got to 60. Then it seemed like everybody ran to the other side of the boat. They all piled in at 60, 61, 62. That stock has pulled back. It pulled back more than I thought. It was trading underneath 50. 49.80 is where it was trading earlier this morning. We had a buyer of 10,500 of the October 49 calls, going for 2.25 all the way up to about 240. So decent sized trade there as well. We've seen a little bit of activity coming into some of these names, GM, and you see it. Obviously, the EV space has been absolutely on fire of late, and that whole world of the battery charging and everything else that just has taken off. And a lot of unusual option activity we have seen across the board in many of the various names involved in the whole EV space. Folks, have yourself a great weekend. Have yourself a wonderful time going through all of the ideas of what we are seeing today and this big flip and what's happened. But I would also tell you this: you want to have the knowledge, and if you have the knowledge of derivatives markets, you will have a much better chance for success. I am absolutely sure about that. Doesn't mean every trade's going to work, but it'll give you a lot better way to sort of find the blueprint of how is the best way to navigate through some of these crazy markets like what we're seeing in this first hour of trade today. Folks, have a great day of trading and have a great weekend.